Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fam Sports New York Varsity. I'm your host, Frank Langella, joined by my co-host, Marcilio Langella. And Mars, this is our Week 3 preview for Section 1AA football. We've had a great couple weeks of football, and we're now getting into the thick of things. Again, once we pass this week, we're almost hitting that halfway point in the regular season. And so these are big games coming up. And we want to welcome our fans to the show. If you guys are new, we cover Section 1 football, talk about the games, do player breakdowns and analysis. And if you are returning, thank you again for joining us. And again, follow our social media accounts that you can see on the screen if you like Section 1 football or you want to follow the Section 1 content. And make sure you guys can get access to all our content on our website at famsportsny.com, where, again, you can listen to the shows. You can go to our YouTube channel. You can access our merchandise, if you want to show support, donations and stuff like that. Everything goes back to the show, so we appreciate any donations that come in. And if you're watching this on YouTube, which that's where all the shows are right now, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button for us, and we would really appreciate, obviously, all feedback. The way it works is similar to what we've done the other weeks, Mars. We'll go over the games on slate. We'll go over a couple of them, and then we'll give our game picks. Just so everyone knows that any of the props, hats, shirts from programs, those are from groups that we have purchased or have been donated. And we want to thank all the teams and programs who have donated and who have shared the link to their team store. And we'll welcome any other future donations. Obviously, of merchandise. We want to collect from all the schools that we cover. But, Mars, you ready to get into it?
I'm ready to roll.
All right, let's talk about the games on slate. And the first one, we'll start going over Friday, and then we'll talk about Saturday. On Friday, we have Scarsdale at White Plains. This is a non-league game from two different divisions. Scarsdale's in League A. White Plains is in League C. Friday, North Rockland is at Spring Valley. This is a league game, both in League B. Friday, John J. East Fishkill at Ossining, a league game. Mount Vernon at Mamaroneck, really interesting game right there. That is also a league game. We have Yonkers Force at Yonkers Brave, the Superintendent's Cup, big rivalry between the Yonkers school. That's a league game as well. New Rochelle at Carmel on a Friday. That's obviously a non-league game, but a really intriguing game. Arlington at Suffern. That is a league game in League B. RCK at Clarkstown South on Friday. That is a non-league game. And then Saturday at Fox Lane at Port Chester, and that is a league game, both teams in League C. And so let's go over a couple of the top matchups, Marcel. Let's start with the Superintendent's Cup in Yonkers. Yonkers Force 0-2 at Yonkers Brave, both in League A. Big rivalry. Again, this is a kind of bragging rights in the Yonkers area between these football programs. And last week, Yonkers Force lost to Mamaroneck. Yonkers Brave lost to Mount Vernon. But you could throw out the records for this one, right, with rivalry games. And Yonkers Force is 2-1 versus the Brave. These teams have kind of gone back and forth. But Yonkers Force won in the spring. And two of the three winners, Mars, an interesting stat, 2 out of the 3 winners have been teams on the road. And it started with Yonkers Force winning, then Yonkers Brave winning, and then Yonkers Force winning this past spring. So they've kind of gone back and forth. Interesting matchup. And I'll start with Yonkers Force, Mars. They're going to run the spread. You're going to see some zone. You're going to see some quarterback reads. You're going to see some jets, some passes. They rely a lot on the quarterback position. So when you talk about offense, you got to look at the quarterback spot, Alvin Martinez. Last week wasn't obviously a big game for him, but the week prior he had 273 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. And I think that Yonkers Force can have success running the ball, both with the quarterback and with a guy like Ryan Joseph, who had 30 yards and a touchdown last week. He also had success, Ryan Joseph, in the spring. Yonkers Brave has shown that they are susceptible to the run, and I think they'll take advantage of that. And a guy like Atticus Olkers, who's an athlete for Yonkers Force, he had 51 yards last week. He's a bit of a playmaker, but I'm looking at this offensive line, and they gave up 5 sacks last week, I believe, Mars. The offensive line has to play better and open up lanes for this running game. And I do think that they have an opportunity. They have solid size up front, but they have to gel together faster, and they can't create leaks like they did last week. Defensively, Mars, they gave up over 200 yards rushing last week. And you're going up against a triple option offense, So again, we talk about this multiple times. You have to win on early downs, and you have to be disciplined. Those are two key factors versus the option. And so I look at the defensive line first, and led by Quadir Holmes, and the front seven have to get penetration, and they have to tackle their read. So whoever's responsible for the fullback has to get the fullback. Whoever's responsible for the quarterback has to get the quarterback. And you have to stay continuously doing that, even though all the motions look the same, because that's what they prey on, that you to be over-aggressive, that you to not tackle your read, and they'll hit you hard with that. So Yonkers Force has to definitely improve stopping the run and being disciplined, and I think they'll have a good chance. When you go to Yonkers Brave, we talk about offensively the triple option. It all starts with getting the fullback involved, then the quarterback keepers. Then you start seeing those twist traps, and then after all that, when you get the fullback and quarterback, now you're going to see those halfbacks come when they get to the triple option part and those pitches and those sweeps to the outside. And then the play action at the end. So it really is a methodical offense. But the most important thing, and we talked about it, winning on early down. So to me, one of the most important positions in all of football is the quarterback spot. But in the triple option offense, the orchestrator is that quarterback. So DJ Holmes is a huge key factor. Again, being smart with the football, not turning it over, and making the correct reads and correct plays for them to have success. And I'm looking at their fullbacks, right? They need to get those hard-earned runs in this offense. And because when you can get those 3 yards, 3.5 yards, and you're ahead of the chains, that's when those big plays can open up on those sweeps, on those traps, on those quarterback keepers and play action. And then the offensive line. Again, I talked about Yonkers Force offensive line has to step up. So does Yonkers Brave offensive line. Defensively, again, their head coach is a defensive guy, right? He came from New Rochelle. Defense is a huge factor. And the big thing for them is going to be forcing turnovers, because Yonkers Brave defense has been a little on and off, but if they can force a couple turnovers and get their offense back on the field, I think they'll have a good chance. I mean, they had a couple fumble recoveries versus Mamaroneck, but they give up too many big plays. And that's been an Achilles heel for this defense that definitely needs to step up. Mars, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, when you take a look at this game, I mean, it's always kind of interesting to see, who's going to win next time. And I feel like it's been kind of that competitive bout between the two. And when you look at Force, they're going to be using a lot of that spread schemes. And I think they have shown some athleticism, especially at the quarterback position. And I really think it's going to be dependent on how the offensive line plays. Really set the stage, set the tone. And I think that if they can kind of dominate the front, then they can really open up both the pass and the run. And defensively, like you said, it's really about the triple option, staying disciplined. I mean, I feel like whenever you play a team like that, it's like you said, it's very methodical. It could be very boring, right? And they're preying on that one opportunity where you don't do your job, and then they're going to really hurt you with it. So I think they have to stay disciplined from the defensive point of view. And it's going to be hard, but it's doable. Yeah. From the other way, from Braves' perspective, I mean, we'll talk about the triple option first, and I think that you have to win the early downs.
Yes, we talk about it all the time.
Yeah, you need to have strong offensive line play, but you really do need your skill positions to make the plays, right? I think that they definitely need to have a good showing from the fullback position and definitely the quarterback position for sure in this type of offense. And from the defensive point of view, you just got to get your offense back on the field, right? If you can control the time of possession, you can really wear down any team with the triple option offense. And I think if they do that, then it's really going to set them up for a solid day.
Let's go to another game, another Friday game. Scarsdale 0-2. They're in League A at White Plains, who is 2-0 in League C. Non-league game. Last week, Scarsdale lost at Arlington. White Plains beat Yonkers Force, and these two teams have kind of gone back and forth. Scarsdale 7-5 versus White Plains since 2004, and the last time they played was in the spring, a very close game where they won 21-14. And let's start with Scarsdale, another team that runs offensively the triple option, and the big thing is avoiding negative plays. They had too many negative plays last week, which kind of throws the offense into a bit of a burden because they're not a pass-heavy team. So if you can get them in second and third and long, that's when you see Scarsdale struggle a bit, and they need to stay ahead of the chains, like I talked about in the previous thing. But it all starts with their bell cow, Julian Glantz. Their fullback and linebacker. He's really their best two-way player. He's the engine of this team, and he's a guy who can run multiple ways. He can run up the gut. He can run off tackle. He'll run those traps. He'll catch some sweeps, and I do think White Plains has the speed on the outside, so this is going to really have to be a north-south game for Scarsdale. They're going to have to get upfield quickly, and a guy like Julian Glantz who can get those hard-earned runs is going to be key for this. But I got a couple other guys because it can't just be Julian Glantz making plays. And I look at the quarterback, Brian Nichols. He had a pass touchdown last week. They're going to try to bail out to stop the run, and there will be opportunities one-on-one to make pass plays in this game for Scarsdale. Question is, can they complete it? And I think Brian Nichols, you saw he's getting a little bit more comfortable the more reps he gets. It's just avoiding those turnovers and those bad plays. But this is an athletic guy, and this is somebody who's going to have to make some big-time plays for them. And a guy who I think has really stepped up, Colby Baldwin, the junior. He had a rush touchdown and a receiving touchdown last week. He had a rushing touchdown against Nershell the week prior. He's at that halfback spot where he can make plays both in the passing game and on those option plays. And this is a guy who has been a nice surprise for them, and he's made some plays for them as a junior. So that's somebody. And, when somebody bails out, the play action is going to open up. And Reese Schellen, the senior, at the wide receiver spot, he is someone who is going to get those one-on-one matchups, and they got to take advantage of it when it comes. You're not going to see a lot of pass plays, but if they could stay ahead of the chains and be, they can dictate how aggressive they want to be if they're in 2nd and 5, 3rd and 3, right? So, those are things to keep in mind. Defensively, again, I look at Scarsdale. I really like how scrappy they were against Nershell, but against Arlington, they gave up way too many big plays. They have a young secondary, so this is what makes me a little nervous about Scarsdale going up against the skill guys of White Plains and the passing attack. But to be honest, last week they gave up too many too many big run plays, and they just weren't physical enough. And I'm expecting that defense to bounce back, and they're going to have their handfuls covering a White Plains receiver LaSalle. So again, I'm looking at it starts with the run defense and that front seven, and then if you can get penetration and get pressure, it'll help that young secondary. Going to White Plains, Mars. How about that rush attack that they had last week, Mars? Even without Eli Pierre, who's one of their best players. Again, don't know the status of him. He's an important piece for this offense. But even without him, quarterback Jay Biondi, he was really good for them. Last week, 180 yards, 88 yards rushing, Mars. 62 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns. Again, he had a really nice game. And it starts up front. The offensive line did a good job. And then Danny LaSalle, he caught both those touchdown passes. Against a young secondary, he could feast on this young secondary. He's a big target wide receiver. He can make big-time plays. And this pass attack could do some damage in this game. Defensively, again, I like the way they've played. They've been aggressive. They've been disciplined. They got to get Scarsdale in those 3rd and longs, 2nd and longs, win the early downs like we talked about in the option football. And again, those DBs, you have to come up for the run in the option offense, but don't take your eyes off your read, right? Because that's where they'll hit you with that play action pass, and they'll run right by him. A guy to keep in mind, Nick Spista, he kind of acts like a strong safety outside linebacker. He'll line up on the line of scrimmage. He'll blitz. This guy he has his fingerprints on both sides of the ball. He's all over the field, and that's somebody to keep in mind. He can make some plays, Mars. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, when you take a look at these teams, I feel like it's definitely an interesting matchup for sure, and I'll start with Scarsdale. And we keep talking about the triple option. I mean, obviously, you can't have negative plays, and I really think that when you look at this comparison to Scarsdale to White Plains has this speed, right? They have this athleticism that really kind of takes away a lot of these outside runs. So I feel like for Scarsdale, it's really going to be about opening up lanes in the middle of the field, and it's going to have to really start with the offensive line, and can they really do that? And if they can, then it really opens up the playbook, right? Because then, like you said, 2nd and 5, can you now hit them with a pass, right? And I think that could at least push White Plains' defense back on the ropes. From the defensive point of view for Scarsdale, like you said, they have a young secondary, and this is going to be a really difficult week for them because White Plains has shown how dynamic they are and how lethal they can be with both on the pass and on the run, and I think that's going to be the key to victory. I think will be from the front seven really causing havoc, right? They need to get penetration on the passing side, and they definitely need to cause havoc on the run side to at least make it a little more difficult for White Plains to establish what they want to do, right? And from the White Plains perspective, they're very dynamic, and I think that they have they're trying to live up to the prediction that you made about being a top offense, and I think a top two offense, and they're doing that in spades. I mean, they're showing what they can do on the run side, and definitely have the speed advantage for sure. So I think they just have to stick to what their bread and butter, and just keep spreading teams out and kind of just winning those one-on-one matchups. And defensively, you just have to stay disciplined. I mean, there's only so much you could say against a triple option.
We've talked about 2 games now.
2 games in a row, and I think that it's just stay disciplined, win the early downs, make sure your front seven can kind of keep all the offensive line at home base, right? Make sure that you don't bail out on a certain key, right? Do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, and to me, if Scarsdale can keep White Plains offense on the sideline would be big. But to me, the status of Eli Pierre is a huge one because he is a big part of White Plains. Let's go to another game, Mars. Really interesting game. Mount Vernon 2-0 in League A at Mamaroneck, who's 2-0 in League A. And I tell you, this is a really intriguing matchup. I'm kind of excited for this one. And Mount Vernon last week beat Yonkers Brave. Mamaroneck beat Yonkers Force, so both of them beat the Yonkers teams. Mamaroneck is 6-1 versus Mount Vernon since 2004. They have won 6 straight. Last time they played each other was in 2019. And let's start with Mount Vernon, one of the big surprises, Mars. And they've started 2-0 in the spring. So they're 2-0 now. They were 2-0 in the spring. The last time they were 2-0 in Double A, just to show you how, what a nice start they've had, was 2007. So it's been 14 years since they started 2-0 in Double A. And offensively, you got to start with their quarterback, Jair Johnson. He's a big playmaker for them. And they have a couple guys that, if they can get into the open field, they can hit those big yardage plays, those big chunk plays, and those long touchdowns. They got some speed out there. But, again, it all starts to me with this offensive line. They have some size up front, guys who can move bodies, guys like, Darren Sloan, who's like 6'1", 315, Amari Hart, who's 6'4", 245. They have a couple guys over 6 feet. All across that offensive line, and all 250 plus. So these are some big boys up front. And again, they don't have the biggest backs, but they have guys with speed. And if you can create some lanes for them, they run hard, they'll hit the hole hard, and they'll hit those big chunk plays. And I think they're going to be relying on those guys. And they've come through so far this year, and I'm interested to see against a Mamaroneck front that has played pretty well how they'll do that. Defensively, they're aggressive, Mars. A lot of people at the line of scrimmage, they like to send stunts, like to send blitzes, but I'm looking at this defensive line to cause penetration. Guys like Nazir John, number 13, he's a junior. He was really good in the independent league. He's made a bunch of plays this year as well. They got to stop this Mamaroneck rush attack. Another guy, defensive tackle, Eric Peterson Tull, excuse me. This kid's 6'4", right? He's another guy over 260. Again, big boys, right? So you're talking about some big guys. And they got to stop this Mamaroneck rush attack. Multiple guys can run the ball. They got to win the point of attack, and it's going to be a heavy reliance on these linebackers that these big boys up front take up these blockers, and these linebackers are going to have to make a bunch of plays in space and in the hole. Another thing in special teams, Mars, they had a kick return for a touchdown. You're going to be the underdog. You got to make plays in special teams that can give yourself a chance to win, and they have that speed out in the special teams that they can return the ball and they can make some plays out there. When you look at Mamaroneck, Mars, offensively, this rush attack is very potent, and I got to start with their quarterback, Jason Cox, who has been very efficient both running and passing the ball. Versus Brave, he went 10 for 10, Mars. We talked about it, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 108 yards. And then versus Force, 4 for 5 for 60-something yards and 2 touchdowns, and also 70 yards rushing and a touchdown. I mean, the guy is 14 of 15 passing, and he's got a $170 running the ball. This guy has been really efficient for this offense, and he is a key cog for this offense, but he's not the only one. I mentioned multiple guys can run the ball. Damari Hamilton, another guy who's been a pleasant surprise, 182 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Longezo Sandrin, we talked about him, Frank's finest, a guy who can, run the ball, catch the ball out of the backfield. He also makes plays on the defensive side of the ball. But to me, the focus is against those big guys up front, against Mount Vernon on the defensive line. I'm looking at the offensive line, right? Led by guys like Matt Sommer, Ben Dutton, multiple other guys. They're going to have to battle it out against these big boys and create lanes for this potent rushing attack, because if they can run the ball efficiently, I think they'll have a good chance of winning. I mean, last week they had 3 different players rush for over 50 yards and a touchdown, so that to me is a key for this offensive line. Defensively, Mars, it's about stopping big plays. Mount Vernon can hit you with some big plays, and so you look at this defensive line and linebackers. Last week, they only allowed 110 yards of offense, and they had 5 sacks. So the defense really came out to play last week. They're going to need it again, and that's going to be the difference, because Mamaroneck, even in the spring, can move the ball. It was, can they play defense at a high level? And the first 2 weeks they have, and they got to continue to do that. Another guy in the back end, Prince Alvarado, he had an INT touchdown. He's been a bit of a playmaker for them on the defensive side of the ball, Mars. What do you want to talk about? This is an intriguing game to me.
No, it is. I completely agree, and I think it's a great thing to see Mount Vernon start off in such a good way, and I think that it really has to be on the backs of this very athletic offense, and I think that they've really gone well and above what expectations are, and for Mount Vernon, this is a great stepping stone in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have like all these skill players that have the speed to really burn you, and I think that it all really mounts, in my opinion, on the offensive line. And we were at the Carmel Lineman Challenge game, and we saw the size firsthand. Big boys up front, they can move people, like moving bodies left and right. And I think now, granted, it's obviously you definitely have to applaud the quarterback Johnson. I think that he has shown that what he can do. He could do a lot of different things. But I think the offensive line, the fact that they're just creating lanes for all these skill players, really does a tremendous thing for them for their offense to really open up the playbook that way. And defensively, they're aggressive and they're in your face, and I think that's going to be something that's going to be I'll be looking for in this game. But specifically, the key for victory is going to be about looking at this front seven. Can they be a force? Right? You're looking at Mamaroneck's rush attack, and you're
very
saying,
potent. Can
they really keep everything bottled up? And special teams for Mount Vernon has been excellent, and I think that they need to make some special teams plays in order to really to cause the momentum shift in their direction. For Mamaroneck, I think like I said already, the rush offense has been fantastic, and I think you see a lot of athleticism from a lot of these guys that can do multiple different things for you. And I think for any defense, it's going to be a headache, right? Because now you have to try to key in on all these different guys. But in my opinion, it's still the same thing. Can the offensive line and Mount Vernon's D line? It's going to be the battle.
That's the battle.
Right? Who's going to win that fight? And I think that whoever can win that battle is going to definitely change the tide of the game. Mount Vernon has definitely shown some greatness so far, and the same thing for Mamaroneck. They've shown some signs of very competitive football, and I think it's going to be very, very interesting.
Big league game, absolutely. Big game for both teams. Let's go to another game, Mars. Arlington 1-1 at in League B at Suffern, who's 2-0. This is a league matchup. Arlington beat Scarsdale last week. Suffern beat Fox Lane, and Arlington, Mars. We know what they did in the spring, right? That was kind of the big statement that they made. They kind of beat up Suffern in the spring the last time they played, and Arlington is 7-1 versus Suffern and won 7 straight. And I talk about that game in the spring. They won 35-8. And let's start with Arlington, Mars. Offensively, I talked about it last week. We showcased their game. And I was looking to see if these quarterbacks would improve and who would separate themselves. And I actually thought both quarterbacks made nice plays. And I'll start with quarterback Resigno. He showed that he could be a dual threat guy. He had that long rushing touchdown. He had a passing touchdown. He showed some nice athleticism and definitely stepped up. And even quarterback Muhammad, he had a passing touchdown as well. Both quarterbacks made enough plays in the passing game to keep defenses honest. But to me, it all starts with the offensive line. I called that offensive line out last week, and they're led by Cubberly and Weathers. I said you got to run the ball to help your young quarterbacks, and that's exactly what they did. They did a really good job opening up lanes, moving bodies, and they got their athlete Griffin 2 rushing touchdowns. Chaffee, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, but he had a rushing touchdown. These running backs had lanes to work with. And that's what they did. They ran the ball. They hit some big pass plays deep. They were a balanced attack. And when they are balanced, they are a potent offense, Mars. And to me, Griffin is one of their best playmakers, and they can move him around. And he made plays both in the running game and passing game. And defense has got to worry about this young man. Defensively, Suffern can hit you multiple ways. They can bottle up. They have to bottle up Samson Joseph. He's the igniter for this offense. They'll line him up at wide receiver. They'll line him up in the Wildcat. You have to know where he is on the field at all times. And the secondary, Suffern's got speed out on the outside. And they can throw the football when they get pass protection. And so this secondary has to be wary of this and got to keep all these plays in front of them. When I look at Suffern, Mars, offensively, I talked about, they can hit you multiple ways. They got, they go into the spread, right? Last week, the spread worked against Fox Lane. The week before, the spread didn't work as much. They went into the Wildcat with Samson Joseph at quarterback and ran with power. So they showed that, hey, we could be pretty balanced too, and we can mix things up based on what is working. But to me, the offensive line is going to be a key factor in this one, going against a big front in Arlington, led by John Krebs, who continues to be a beast in the running game. But I thought last week, the young tackles stepped up. They showed that improvement and would really help spark this offense to be really solid. But I started the quarterback. Well, not start. I moved to the quarterback, Andre Risco, who to me I thought he's been pretty solid so far this season. I know it was a bit of a struggle in the spring. He's definitely shown improvement coming to this season, he's just been more decisive and smarter with the football, and he's made some nice plays. And they have some weapons. I mean, you talk about Joseph, we did, Harris, Bloom, and then you have running backs, Samson Joseph, they bring in the backfield, Dorcelli. I mean, they got guys, different guys who can make plays for this offense. Defensively, it all starts with stopping the running game. You're going up against a big front. And so I'm looking at the defensive line and guys like Dylan Yang to lead the way, who last week was a dominant force, 3 tackles for loss, a sack. And that matchup versus Cubberley Mars is something I am very intrigued on watching. And then I look at those linebackers because they have to be really active as well. Desir, Dorcelli. This is a downhill rush attack, and they're going to have to attack the line of scrimmage. Do not hesitate because those linemen will come at you, and they'll beat you up. So to me, if I'm Suffern, I want to see those quarterbacks continue to try to win the game for him. Take the ball out of the running back's hands and put it into the quarterback's hands. And you got to be wary of where Griffin is on the field. When he lines up as a wide receiver, you know, the odds of them throwing it to him is pretty high. And when he lines up in the backfield, you have to know where he is out on the field because he is a dangerous football player. Mars, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'll first talk about Arlington. And I feel like when you look at this Arlington offense, and this is the offense I was predicting to be one of the top, maybe the top 2 offenses in Section 1AA. And I feel like they kind of showed that last week that they have the ability to kind of hit you in a lot of different ways, right? And I think we look at the dual quarterback system that they're running. I feel like both quarterbacks made plays, and I think that's impressive. But it really has to start with the offensive line. They stepped up big time. They were just showing how dominant they could be, and I think that they need to continue doing that. Really establish the run game going forward. And for defensively, I mean, Suffern has a lot that they can throw at you, right? And I think that defensively, it's going to really be up to the front 7 to really kind of stop any sort of run. But this, like you said, the secondary is going to be tested, right? And I think that's going to be kind of their performance in the past is going to definitely set the tone going forward. But I really think this defensive line is definitely got to go up against a really tough Suffern O line, and I think that's going to.
But they have young tackles, so I think the edge guys can have. I thought the young tackles improved, Mars, but again, you want to see if they can continue to stand up.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think when I look at Suffern's offensive line, offensive line and just offense in general, I think the fact that they can hit you in a spread look and then maybe give you some more of those power looks, especially with the Wildcat, is pretty impressive. And I think that their offense is like an enigma. Like it's something where it's like, They can morph into something completely different, and I think that's just a dangerous thing, right? I feel like when you can change on the fly based on what you're seeing in front of you as a defense, that's backbreaking, you know. And I feel like Suffern has that ability to do so, but it all really depends on, in my opinion, the offensive line being successful and continuing growing, right? Keep getting better as the weeks go on. Defensively, like you already mentioned, the front 7. It's really going to have to be the front 7. Really have to play to another level. They have to stop the run.
And I think this defense could be a good defense. I know week 1 against North Rockland wasn't the best showing until the second half. Last week against Fox Lane, you saw what I thought would be a really good defense, and they showed out. And so, to me, that front, like you're talking about, Mars, versus the O-line of Arlington, that's a really intriguing fight.
Yeah, no, and I think that's going to be the key. I think that's like kind of what I'm watching the most right now.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the game of the week, Mars. And there's no question about what this week's game of the week would be. And that's New Rochelle 2-0 at Carmel 2-0. This is a non-league game. New Ro's in League A, Carmel's in League B. But this is a rematch from, the 2019 Section 1AA Championship. And a really intriguing regular season matchup. I mean, New Rochelle last week, they won versus John J. East Fishkill. Carmel with a win versus Spring Valley. And New Rochelle, no question, historically has owned this matchup. They're 6-1 versus Carmel. They have won 6 straight since 2004. And again, the last time they played was in that section title where they won 42-14. But this could be the first time that New Rochelle is an underdog in this game, Mars. So really intriguing dynamic here. And let's start with New Rochelle. Offensively, they can really put pressure on you out on the edges. They can run the off tackle. They can get on the edge, whether it's via pass or via jet sweep. And they have those playmakers that when they get in space, Mars, multiple guys can hit home runs on you. They have some of the fastest kids in the section. They'll hit those long chunk plays, really be demoralizing for a defense. And I want to start with their running back, Jaquiz Brandon. I mean, we always see that, New Rochelle has, again, not big, bulking running backs, right? But they have good-sized running backs who, when they get an open field, it's see you later. And Brandon is not a very tall guy at 5'6", but he is a shifty guy, and he has speed. He had a 90-plus yard touchdown last week, over 100 yards. I think it was about 170-something, right? So this is a shifty back behind a decent-sized offensive line led by Gagliardo, going up against a veteran defensive front, Mars. That is going to be the key for them to try to run the ball, and I expect New Rochelle to try to hit those off tackles and hit those jet plays to test the edge defenders and test if these DBs can tackle in space. And then it comes to play action, right? Quarterback Luzzy has been real impressive to me. He was last week 6 of 9. Again, not a lot of attempts, but 148 yards passing and a touchdown. He hit Sean Santiago on a long, beautiful touchdown pass. And again, they have guys on the outside who the defensive backs have to be wary of. They have to keep them in front. And you're probably going to see a bunch of zone coverage. They don't want to go into too much man because they have this speed. I mean, guys like Santiago, Clark, Nico Andrews, they got guys who can really blow the top off of defense. And again, you have to be wary not just those guys running patterns, but getting those jet sweeps as well. Defensively, I would imagine Carmel's going to try to run downhill on New Rochelle. I think they have that veteran offensive line. They have Massey, who is a beast of a running back, and they're going to try to bump and grind with New Rochelle. And because if you go into an East-West matchup, it really favors New Rochelle. So I'm looking at the defensive line, guys like Benitez, at the linebacker spot, guys like Tuck, Boheny. How are they going to withstand a downhill rushing assault? If they can stop Carmel on that downhill rushing assault, it kind of takes away their play-action game, which is a deadly game when they get the quarterback rolling out. That could put a lot of pressure. So the big thing to me is try to stop the downhill rush attack and keep quarterback Dahl inside the pocket. You want him to go into the spread looks and throw from in the pocket multiple times, because then you can get your defensive backs who have good speed, guys like Clark who had an INT. You can get those guys attacking the football. But again, the big thing is stopping the downhill running and keeping the quarterback inside the pocket. And when I go to Carmel, Mars, offensively, same thing. I do think they got to stay true to their identity, which is establishing that downhill running attack with their running back, Massey, who is a beast. Guy, really good job of running through contact. The offensive line and tight ends, I imagine they're going to bring them in and try to run with power because they have good-sized kids. And they, the line and the tight ends show that they can block and they can move bodies. And that would be huge if Carmel can establish that, because it opens up that play action. Because when you get Dahl on the edge, when you get him doing play action, that's when he's most deadly. I actually think Carmel has I'm not going to say a size advantage, but I do think they can have a strength advantage in this one, Mars. And they also, at the wide receiver spot, have some big-bodied receivers, guys like Fiore, DeLeo. These are big-bodied targets, and you got to take advantage of them. When you get that downhill rushing attack, you got to be strategic with your deep ball, right? But I think it'll be there. Give those guys a 50-50 chance, right? Don't underthrow a ball, right? Don't give the corners a chance to run underneath it. But if they're one-on-one, right, and you got those big-body targets, give them an opportunity for a jump ball. Give him an opportunity for a jump ball. I'm not saying, again, don't throw a real underneath ball where the corner can just run underneath, right? So give him a nice jump ball, because you have good size at the wide receiver spot. And I think they're going to be calculating when they do it, because you do have to open it up. You can't just throw all short and all that, right? So try to take some shots, run the ball downhill. Defensively, I'm looking at these edge defenders, Mars. They have to be huge in this game. Guys like Telesco and Fusco, because that's who's going to really be tested. The edge guys, the outside linebackers, the strong safeties. New Rochelle is going to test their ability to tackle an open field and to guard and to stop and to seal off the edge. Because if they don't, it's going to be a long day for this defense, because they have a lot of speed. And if they can't stop it, that's when it's going to open up these pass plays. And so I'm looking at this secondary again. Got to keep these guys in front of you. So to me, these edge guys are so big, not just for the run game, Mars, but getting pressure on the quarterback, that you might not have to bring blitzes. Because if you bring blitzes, you got to go into man, right? Or you got to go in zone on one side of the field, man backside. And you're really putting those guys on an island. So you got to get home on this quarterback. So it's going to be huge for these guys to get pressure without trying to bring, by just bringing their front four. That's going to be huge for them. Mars, what do you want to talk about before I go to the matchup and player to watch?
I mean, this is definitely a showdown, and this is more than deserving to be the game of the week, because of the fact that this is like a reoccurring almost rivalry at this point, where we keep seeing this almost every year. These two programs are constantly fighting each other for the top spot. But the fact that New Rochelle is now the underdog this year feels weird.
Very weird.
It's very different. And I think that when you look at the offensive point of view, you have speed, right? You've always had speed, and I feel like you have to try to get off tackle, like back to the bread and butter New Rochelle run game, and you want to try to test the speed of Carmel. See, can they match what you can do? And I think that by doing that, you're really going to have, you're going to start opening up a lot of other play options in your playbook. And I think if you start to set the run, and we talked about this already, that you can then open up the play action. But I just think that Carmel, New Rochelle is going to look to try to just get to the outside, and they're going to say, I bet my guy's faster than yours.
Yep.
And I think they're going to try to make this a track meet with how fast they can be. And I'm wondering if Carmel can withstand that. And from New Rochelle's defensive point of view, it's really going to depend on the front seven. Can they stay strong against these downhill type of offensive runs? And specifically, can they keep everything inside, right? And in my opinion is, if they can try to keep the quarterback inside, try to keep all these rollouts, from going far to the sideline.
Yeah,
basically.
because Dahl is really good at, it's a run pass option. He could take off and run, or he could throw it, right? And so you have to keep him in the pocket, so it forces him to throw the ball.
Yeah, and I think, in my opinion, I think that New Rochelle has always had a very good ability to get to the quarterback, especially in the pass rush, and that they're going to have to do that, right? They're going to have to cause mayhem in the backfield. And it's going to be tough against a good offensive line from Carmel. And I think from the Carmel's point of view, go to your bread and butter. Do the downhill runs, establish that, so then you can then open up to do some play action.
Yep.
And they've shown that they can do that in a very effective way. And you kind of mentioned you have some size advantage to a certain extent.
I think it's strength, not like height, but I think strength advantage.
Sure. And at the end of the day, if New Rochelle is sending heat, means you're going to get one-on-one matchups. And can your guys win in those one-on-one matchups is going to be the big question. Defensively, it's pretty simple. Keep the contain, right? You have to basically not get driven out, and you definitely need to just keep contain going, and you need to put the pressure on New Rochelle, especially when they start going in the pass. A lot of teams have always played New Rochelle, and the times that they were successful is when they got pressure to the quarterback. And if you can do that without, like you said, without sending the stunts to put your onus on your secondary, the pressure on your secondary, that'd be a great thing going forward. So it should be an interesting game for sure to see, these two powerhouses, right? What's going on? What's going to happen now? This is like the third time in like
last couple of years.
Last couple of years.
I really, to me, these are two good play action teams, and I think both quarterbacks have been really efficient. But to me, going to the matchup to watch, Mars, for me, and again, I'll let you talk about it, I'm looking at these New Rochelle receivers versus the Carmel secondary. I think this is really going to be a showdown, and I'm excited to see who comes out on top with this. This is going to be really intriguing because I think both sides have a lot of talent. Players to me, the player to watch, I'm looking at their safety and running back, Nick Rosafort. He's their strong safety. He'll sometimes play as a deep safety. He's a guy who attacks the line of scrimmage like an extra linebacker. He's going to have to make a lot of plays in space. He's going to be in coverage. He's going to be coming up for the run. This is a guy who I think can make a lot of plays for this defense, and he's going to need to be huge for them to win this game. Mars, any last comments before we go to game picks?
No, man. I feel like this is going to be a showdown for sure, and it's going to be really tough to make the game pick, in my opinion.
Yeah. And let's talk about the game picks. Our goal, Mars, is to get over 75% by the end of the year. And last week in AA, I went 8-1. You went 7-2. And our buddies over at Low HUD, they went 8-1 as well. So let's get to the game picks. We always like to have fun. I know, some people like to bag on us for picking wrong, and we enjoy. It's all in good fun. So we enjoy it. So are you ready for the game picks, Mars?
Yeah, man, I'm ready to roll.
All right, let's start it off, Mars. Scarsdale 0-2, League A at White Plains, who's 2-0. League C. This is a non-league game, which is important because league standings is the most important thing in the regular season at this point. Then comes the overall record. But to me, I look at Scarsdale, Mars. It's really hard for them if they fall to 0-3. They have that young secondary. After this game, they have 4 league games. So even if win or lose, this is not the end of the world, right? Because they're going to be playing a bunch of league games coming up. I look at White Plains, and what's the status of Eli Pierre? He's a huge part of this team, probably their best playmaker. But I think they're going to be able to run the ball, and they'll hit some big plays in this passing game against that young secondary. And I'm looking guys like Nick Spiesta and LaSalle to be big in this game, Mars. I am going to go with White Plains to win. Again, Scarsdale, I still have a lot of faith. I said that they would break their playoff drought this season, so I don't think the season's over if they lose, but I'm going to go White Plains in this one, Mars.
Yeah, I'm going to go White Plains as well. I feel like White Plains has a lot of speed. They have a lot of talent on this roster, and I feel like they're going to just try to get the ball back in their hands as much as possible, and I feel like they're just going to just keep getting those opportunities, and they'll just kind of have the score advantage, in my opinion.
Let's go to another game. North Rockland 0-2 in League B at Spring Valley, who's 0-2 in League B. Both teams trying to get their first win. This is a league matchup. And I'm going to say this. I look at North Rockland, and I thought the defense stepped up last week. And the offense, again, they showed life running the ball, but they just have too many bad turnovers and just too many just too many mishaps, whether it's the blocked extra point, right? Whether it's the turnover in the red zone, whether they give up a big play in the passing game. They just have to tune things up because they have the talent and they show signs of life. And then I look at the other side, Spring Valley, a young team. I want to see how they react to back-to-back losses. They had a really tough game against a really solid Carmel team. I want to see who's going to step up. Which one of these young guys are going to make a statement this season as they continue to grow? Looking at both sides, I'm going to go with North Rockland, though. I think North Rockland finally does make enough plays and doesn't make the big mistake to lose the game. I'm going to go with North Rockland on this one, Morris.
Yeah, I'm going to go with North Rockland as well. I picked them last week, and it was a nail biter. And
overtime
I feel like
loss,
it was a showdown. I think North Rockland. I know it was a tough loss,
yeah.
But you
they've had back-to-back tough losses.
Yeah, but you know what? You feel like the momentum is kind of still there for them. I feel like they feel like, you know what? They were so close both games, and I feel like they're just itching. They just want that win. I feel like. Yeah, from the other point of view, Spring Valley is still a young team, right? And I feel like and I said this in the team preview, they're going to get better throughout the season, right? Just because they're going to get more experience. I just think that it's still too early for them to pull off a win like this, and I'm going to go with North Rockland here.
Tough games. I mean, you got South, Carmel, North Rockland for a young Spring Valley team. It's tough. Let's go to the next game. John J. East Fishkill 1-1 in League C at Ossining, who's 1-2 in League C. And to me, I look at John G. Fishkill, they're a young team, right? Multiple young players, multiple sophomores playing. But I thought last week they showed some physicality. And this pass attack, I want to see if they can rebound and make some plays. And on the Ossining side, they're physical up front. Guys like Bernardo and Cruz, they're guys who are going to fight with you and make some plays on both the offensive and defensive side. And I thought a guy like Gio Jean-Pierre really stepped up last week without Francis. He had 3 touchdowns last week. Their quarterback Gallery can make plays. He had 2 touchdowns. But I do think John J. Fishkill is going to rebound from that New Rochelle loss. And I think you're going to see a couple of those young guys make some nice plays. I'm going to go with John J. Fishkill.
Yeah, I'm going to go with John J. too. I feel like it was definitely a tough one for them. And I think that they just have more of those skill players, more of the offensive lines, kind of all in sync. And I just think this is going to be a bounce back win for them this coming week.
Let's go to the next game. Mount Vernon 2-0 in League A at Mamaroneck 2-0 in League A. Really intriguing one. We broke this one down, Mars. Mount Vernon's looking to go 3-0. They got that size up front. They got those speedy guys who can hit big plays in the open field. The question to me is, can they stop this potent rush attack of Mamaroneck? And Mamaroneck, again, they have a 3-headed monster at the rushing attack with their quarterback and 2 running backs. This offensive line versus the defensive line of Mount Vernon. Quarterback Cox, can he stay efficient? A lot of important headlines in this one. I think Mamaroneck is going to win. They are home. And again, they're kind of playing for their community. They have a bit of momentum, a bit of swagger to them. I like both teams, but I'm going to go with Mamaroneck on this one.
I'm going to go with Mount Vernon. I'm gonna think they're going to go 3-0, and I want to find out the stat last time they went
3-0. I'm not sure. Was it back in 2007? I'm not sure.
Might be, but I'm going to go with that. I'm going to make the take here that Mount Vernon's on a roll right now. They have a lot of skill positions. They have a lot of speed and a lot of power up front, and I think this is going to be their chance to really pull ahead. I think they're going to just try to dominate the front with the front 7. So I'll go Mount Vernon.
Next game, RCK 0-2 in League C at Clarkstown South, who's 2-0 in League B. Non-league game. And I look at RCK, they gave up over 240 yards rushing last week. They got to be more physical up front. A guy like Nunez, you want to see step up. And I want to see this quarterback step up for RCK. Try to make some plays. Try to get a spark in this offense. At Clarkstown South, they've been a pleasant surprise. It's a surprise to many, but not really a surprise to me. I always thought that they had some talent, and I thought the defense really stepped up last week. They forced turnovers. They make timely stops. RCK has the tendency to turn the ball over, and Clarkstown South showed they have multiple guys who can run the ball, although, again, It's going to be tough to run in between the tackles, but I do think they can get out on the edge. I'm going to go with Clarkstown South, Mars. I think they start the season 3-0.
Yeah, RCK, I feel like has just been making too much mistakes, so I'm going to go with Clarkstown South as well. I think they're going to capitalize on those mistakes, and they're just going to kind of pull away, with an easy win here.
Next game, Fox Lane 1-1 in League C at Portchester, who's 0-2, also League C. This is a league game. Fox Lane's 3-1 versus Portchester since 2004. Last time they played, though, in 2017, Portchester came out on top. Offensively, Mars, I'm looking to see these quarterbacks rebound, guys like Travis and Miller, see if they can make some plays in the passing game. And they're running back DeBono at number 21, Navarro number 16. I thought they did some solid things. I know it was tough against Suffern last week, but I did see some solid plays out of the run game. But to me, you got to get Logan Matson the ball. He's their best playmaker. He's been a big-time player for them. Defensively, you got to be disciplined. They run that option offense. A guy like Bernero at the safety spot is very active in the run game. I can imagine he's going to make some plays. And for Portchester, I like the way they fought back. They were down 25-6 in the third quarter. Brought it back 25-19, ended up losing. But to me, it starts with Colin Taylor. He had his hands all over that field on the offensive side, defensive side, special teams. He is their best player. He had a kick return touchdown, a rushing touchdown, and a forced fumble. But I'm looking at, this linebacking core. Guys like Polanco, can they make some plays? Guys like Hins, they're going to have to be very active defensively. I'm going to go with Fox Lane. I like the scrappiness of this unit.
Yeah, I'm going to go the same thing. Fox Lane has been tough. They've been aggressive, and I feel like they just have a little bit more in the tank compared to Portchester, and I think that they're going to just come away with the win here. I'm going to go Fox Lane.
Let's go to the Yonkers game, Mars. The Superintendent's Cup. Yonkers Force 0-2 at Yonkers Brave. League game, big-time rivalry. And you look at Yonkers Force, they go to the spread. The quarterback had success running. I think they will have success running the ball. And I want to see this offensive line step up. How disciplined is this defense? Can they, prevent those big plays? And Yonkers Brave, same thing on the defensive side. Stopping big plays. They forced a couple turnovers, but too many big plays. I want to see how this offense continues to progress. This is a close one to me, but I'm going to go Yonkers Force. Again, I'm going to kind of go with the road team who's won 2 out of the 3 matchups. I think it makes it 3 out of the 4. I'm going Yonkers Force.
I'm gonna go Yonkers Brave. I'm just gonna kind of, this is almost like that toss-up game, and I feel like that whenever it's a rivalry game like this, it's hard to tell what's gonna happen. I'm gonna go with Brave because I feel like they're gonna start to establish a presence on the offensive line. They're gonna try to control the clock, and I think it's gonna be a faster game because they're gonna have more possessions. And I think I'm gonna go with Brave here.
Arlington 1-1 in League B at Suffern 2-0 in League B. Again, interesting matchup to me. Arlington, I love the way the offensive line played, and these quarterbacks stepped up last week. They showed that balanced attack that I was always asking for. Defensively, they're going to have to create pressure on the quarterback. They're going to have to win up front, win against these young tackles. And I'm interested to see if they're going to just do it with the front four or bring pressure. Suffern, I think they're looking to get revenge offensively. Again, attack these DBs with the speed, get on the edge. Defensively, to me, this is where this can carry this team, is this defense. And so I want to see this defense step up, be aggressive, and make a statement in this one. I'm going to go with Suffern. I think Suffern is going to get revenge. I do think they win, but I do think it's going to be a close one.
Yeah, this one was tough for me to pick, but I feel like I'm going to go with Suffern. I think that Suffern has shown that they still have remnants from the team from last year, where they have a lot of those skill players that can make the plays, and the fact that they can come at you with different looks and they're still effective either way is a very dangerous thing to go up against. And I think that it's going to be a fight for sure, but I'm going to go with Suffern. Let's
go to the game of the week, Mars. New Rochelle 2-0 at Carmel 2-0. Non-league game, but to me, this feels like a statement game for both teams. New Rochelle's the underdog. Carmel, a lot of pressure on them. They're at home. Who do you got and why, Mars?
Well, this one was definitely a tough one for sure. And I feel like when you look at both these programs, they've been consistently doing well. And New Rochelle has definitely had the advantage, and obviously when they've been winning because they have all this talent and great coaching. And I feel like their defense has been very potent. But this is kind of like that year where New Rochelle's been down. And I feel like that's what everyone's kind of pointing to. Is this the same New Rochelle team that we're always used to seeing?
Didn't look like it the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and then you look at Carmel from the other side, and Carmel has been kind of just running away with games, right? They've just been kind of dominating in all facets, and this is just one of those teams that feel like the chemistry has just been spot on to the point where even last spring, everyone was saying, well, this is going to be one of Carmel's worst years, and now all of a sudden they're still one of the top teams. So it tells you that these kids have a lot of scrappiness to them, and that the coaching staff is definitely instilling that in many different ways. And we already know Coach K is definitely going to throw the kitchen sink no matter what year it is. So with that being said, I'm going to go with the Carmel Rams. I think that Carmel, this is kind of the big statement game that they've been waiting for. And I think New Rochelle is still a fantastic program. I just think they have a lot of younger guys. They still have a lot of talent, but they're just younger. And I think that Carmel, this is like their chance to really cement themselves as being the top team of the year, right? If they can win against New Rochelle, make a statement, and then they can try to ride that momentum all the way to the playoffs, I think that would be a big deal for Carmel, being one of the smaller schools in AA, to really make a statement against one of the bigger schools in AA.
Again, we're only in week 3. This is obviously going to be Carmel's biggest test, right? Against New Rochelle, who has a lot of athletes, got some size and strength up front. This is a good New Rochelle team, and to me, the offense the last week showed really good balance. And they're going to really test the gap responsibility and these edge defenders and defensive backs of Carmel. When I look at Carmel, again, can they establish that downhill rushing attack and get the play action off of that and get Dahl on the edge where he's most deadly defensively? They cannot let New Rochelle hit these big-time plays, and not just from the defensive standpoint, but special teams. New Rochelle in week 1 couldn't get going offensively. All they needed was one kick return to spark their team, and they had that kind of speed. So a guy like Nick Sedano is going to be huge. Don't kick it to these New Rochelle returners. Get it away from them. Make sure it's a touchback, or make a really nice punt so they can't return it. I mean, whenever New Rochelle shows up, Mars, when those guys in white and purple show up, there's this aura around them. They're not just super talented, but it feels like that aura scares teams, right? When you see the Purple People Eaters, there's a famous football team, the Purple People Eaters, and we used to nickname New Rochelle that because when they showed up, it felt like it wasn't just the team and athleticism you were playing their reputation, and you had to avoid making mistakes, and that tension caused you to make mistakes. But this feels a little different, right? They're the underdogs. And when they're the underdogs, it feels like they're even more deadly. So I feel like I'm leaning towards the purple, but it's in Carmel, the Carmel Rams, Ram Nation, the Carmel Crazies. They're going to be going nuts. And I agree with you, Mars. I think Carmel, this is the time. This is the moment. They saw in the spring that New Rochelle got defeated by Suffern, right? So they can bleed. They bleed like every other person, every other team. This is the moment. If you are the team to beat, this is the game that you go out and you win this game. Great. I'm going with the Carmel Rams, Mars. Ram Nation, this is the time. You're home. You got the fans going nuts. And if you are the best team, if you want to make the statement that you're the top dog in AA, these are the kind of games you got to win. So I'm going Carmel, Mars. All right, man. I mean, I can't wait for that game. This is going to be so interesting. It would not surprise me either team winning. No, but I'm going to go with Carmel. It wouldn't surprise
me either.
And that is our show. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We appreciate you guys. I hope you have a great football weekend. Again, I'm going with the Rams. Go Rams. And we'll see you all very soon.